The 1980s, a decade of synth-pop arcade cabinets and cars so baffling you find yourself asking, how did anyone approve this? As automakers raced to innovate, chasing better fuel economy, experimenting with futuristic styling, and wrestling with new tech, some creations completely veered off course. The result? Cars that looked like unfinished sketches, drove like broken toys, and earned their place as unforgettable misfires in automotive history. In this video, we're diving into 8 of the most astonishing automotive flops of the 1980s. Vehicles that left consumers scratching their heads, critics stunned, and owners wondering what they ever saw in them. Think you've already seen the ugliest car ever built? That's when you'll realize ugliness has no limits. So buckle up. We're about to tour through the mechanical missteps, design disasters, and glorious blunders that haunted the darker corners of 1980s car culture. Number 1. 1981 AMC Eagle Camback. If you look at the Eagle Camback and think, that's just a Gremlin on stilts, you're not entirely wrong. But the real story is even stranger. By the late 70s, AMC was struggling. Their lineup was outdated, money was tight. But they still had one major asset: Jeep. So they hatched a plan. Combine Jeep's four-wheel drive prowess with their existing passenger car platforms. Thus, the AMC Eagle was born, a quirky but clever early crossover. But then came a Camback, a Frankenstein creation that was essentially a reworked AMC Spirit, which was itself a reworked Gremlin, now lifted and mated with Jeep's 4x4 system. The result? A weirdly proportioned hatchback that looked like someone raided the leftover parts bin. And AMC seemed to know it too. They only built 563 units, and if you try to find a rear-view photo in any official brochure, good luck. Even they seemed embarrassed by how it looked from behind. While the Eagle concept was forward-thinking, the Camback was a footnote best left in the dusty corners of AMC lore. Number 2. 1985 Alfa Romeo Milano. When you hear Alfa Romeo, you think of graceful curves, passionate engineering, and undeniable Italian flair. So when the 1985 Milano hit the streets, expectations were sky high. Underneath, the Milano had promise. It featured a unique rear-wheel drive transaxle layout, the beloved Busso V6 engine, and sharp driving dynamics that made it a joy on twisty roads. But the moment you laid eyes on it, everything changed. The Milano looked like a car that suffered a design breakdown halfway through development. Its proportions were awkward, as if someone had started crafting an executive sedan and then gave up halfway through rendering it. The rear end looked abruptly sliced off, nothing lined up quite right, and the overall shape felt disjointed. Inside, things didn't improve much. The cabin was filled with strange angles, odd switch placements, and visibility quirks that made you wonder what the design team was thinking. While the Milano wasn't a mechanical failure, and some enthusiasts still admire its driving charm, its styling missteps made it one of the most awkward-looking Alfas ever made. Even Italian passion can lose its way when form fails to meet function. Number 3. 1981 Maserati Biturbo. When you hear Maserati, images of Italian flair, luxurious curves, and blistering performance come to mind. But in 1981, the Maserati Biturbo arrived, and suddenly, that image took a hit. On paper, the Biturbo was groundbreaking. A rear-wheel drive coupe featuring the world's first twin-turbocharged V6 in a mass-produced car. Maserati aimed to democratize performance, offering their racing pedigree to a broader audience, without losing their signature charm. But then you saw it. The Biturbo looked like a bland Japanese economy car, or worse, a bad clone of a Chevy Citation coupe. The styling was dull and uninspired, with soft edges and zero presence. It lacked the aggression or elegance you'd expect from an Italian marque. Even worse, its performance was overshadowed by dreadful reliability. The complex turbo system, finicky electronics, and low-grade interior materials turned the Biturbo into a maintenance nightmare. It didn't elevate Maserati to new heights. It anchored them in an era of costly recalls and lost reputation. What was supposed to be Maserati's golden ticket became a cautionary tale in how not to go mainstream. Number 4. 1984 Ford Tempo. Ford envisioned the 1984 Tempo as the future of American sedans. A sleek, aerodynamic leap into a new design era. Flush headlights, streamlined contours, and a European design philosophy promised to change perceptions. But then came the headlights. Just before launch, Ford realized that their modern headlamp design hadn't passed US regulations. So instead, the Tempo rolled out with boxy sealed beam headlights and outdated chrome bezels, turning a futuristic face into something out of the past. Things didn't get much better over time. A few years later, Ford redesigned the rear, and somehow made it boxier and even more awkward. It was like they fixed the front, only to sabotage the back. One step forward, two steps back. Under the hood, the Tempo packed a noisy, underpowered four-cylinder derived from an old inline-six block. Its ride was bouncy thanks to a bargain bin suspension in the interior, so dull it could put a caffeinated teenager to sleep. The Tempo wasn't a disaster in every respect. It sold reasonably well, but it symbolized a period when American automakers kept aiming for innovation and missing the mark. Number 5. 1982 Nissan Stanza Wagon. Some automotive historians argue that the 1982 Nissan Stanza Wagon was a hidden pioneer, an early vision of what would later become the crossover SUV. It had a tall stance, a roomy interior, and family-focused practicality. Sounds ahead of its time, right? That is, until you laid eyes on it. The Stanza Wagon looked like a tiny cargo van drawn by a second grader. Its harsh-angle, slab-sided profile, and a front end that looked like it had been flattened by a steamroller, gave it all the curb appeal of a breadbox. And those long side windows? They made it look more like a retirement home shuttle than a forward-thinking family car. It had the right idea, a multi-purpose vehicle that wasn't quite a minivan and wasn't yet an SUV. But American buyers weren't ready to embrace a vehicle that looked like a school project made out of corrugated cardboard. Had it been better styled, the Stanza Wagon might have been remembered as a visionary. Instead, it became a forgotten oddity, a steel snail inching across the history books, remembered more for its awkwardness than its ambition. Number 6. 1985 Subaru XT. The 1980s were an era of radical design, when automakers dared to dream in polygons and wind tunnels ruled everything. Enter the 1985 Subaru XT, a car that looked more like a sci-fi doorstop than a proper coupe. Subaru had ambition, no doubt. The XT sat low, stretched long, and featured flat, ruler straight lines that made it seem more like a plastic toy from a Japanese anime than a real sports car. But things got even stranger inside. The steering wheel, shaped like a sideways L. The dashboard, a full-on video game, inspired LCD display. And the gear shifter, so oversized and awkward, it looked like something pulled from a budget spaceship prop. The interior felt futuristic, just not in a good way. More arcade machine than automobile. Under the hood, it had a 1.8-liter turbocharged engine. A promising phrase until you learn it made just 111 horsepower. Not exactly thrilling. A four-wheel drive variant with adjustable air suspension was a technical novelty. But it wasn't enough to save the XT's reputation. In the end, the Subaru XT proved that bold doesn't always equal beautiful, and futuristic styling won't impress anyone if the driving experience feels like a punchline. Number 7. 1980 Excalibur Series IV. In an alternate timeline, the 1980 Excalibur Series IV might have been a retro icon, something like a 1980s love letter to the Roaring '20s. But in our reality, it looked like a neo-classic fever dream. Excalibur had built a name for itself, crafting modern cars disguised as vintage luxury vehicles, styled after the grand Mercedes-Benz SSK of the 1930s. But with the Series IV, they didn't just pay homage. They went completely overboard. You got it all. An upright grille, fake side-mounted spare tires, a split roofline that looked like a carriage top, and cartoonishly exposed wire wheels. It didn't scream elegance. It whispered costume party limo for a Batman villain. And just when you thought it couldn't get worse, you saw the rear, a boxy, squared-off mess that looked like someone taped a moving box to the back of a parade float. Despite being hand-built in limited numbers and priced as a luxury product, the Series IV never reached icon status. Instead, it became a cautionary tale. When expensive taste meets confused design, you don't get timeless, you get tacky. Number 8. 1980 Ferrari Mondial. Many say there's no such thing as an ugly Ferrari. But the 1980 Ferrari Mondial might just make you rethink that. The Mondial was an ambitious concept, a mid-engine, rear-wheel drive four-seater Ferrari. On paper, brilliant idea. In reality, a car that ended up looking long, awkward, and lacking the usual Ferrari charisma. Its most debated feature was the front end, with a recessed grille, pop-up headlights, and a fascia that many compared to bent Venetian blinds. From some angles, it almost seemed like the car was hanging its head in shame. Performance-wise, the Mondial wasn't terrible, but compared to its legendary siblings, it lacked excitement. The interior was surprisingly roomy but sterile, while the driving experience was tame, and acceleration left a lot to be desired. The Ferrari Mondial stands as a reminder that even the most revered brands can stumble. And when they do, the automotive world never forgets. After revisiting these 8 of the most controversial cars from the 1980s, one thing's clear. This decade was a playground where automakers dared to try anything, even things they probably shouldn't have, from bizarre coupes to baffling neoclassic customs. This list shows how creativity sometimes crossed the line into madness. Yet these very failures gave the 80s its unique character. They remind us not every weird car is bad and not every bad car is meaningless. Some have even become cult classics among collectors today. Have you ever seen any of these wild rides in person? Which one do you think deserves the title of the absolute worst? Drop your thoughts and comments. Leave a like if you enjoyed the ride, and don't forget to subscribe for more strange tales from automotive history.